iterative mindset is something that I discovered out in the field in behavioral research of people who were working for a very, very jumbo company. And some of them had achieved long-term healthy weight and gotten off all their meds. So in mass, what we've seen is that our whole society now has a habenula hit, meaning our habenulas are on when it comes to behavior change. So we are collectively disempowered. Those that keep going long-term are really, really good at that and good at this whole process of experimentation or practice, neutralizing failure, and then iterating your way out of any bind. And that makes you unstoppable in the end.
Ever wondered why your best intentions to lose weight often lead to frustration and failure? It's not just about counting calories and hitting the gym. Today, we talk about the hidden trigger that sabotages all your efforts with Dr. Kyra Bobinet. She is the CEO and founder of Fresh Try, a neuroscience-driven health behavior change platform. With an MD from USCF and an MPH from Harvard School of Medicine, Dr. Bobinet brings her expertise as an adjunct professor at Stanford School of Medicine and Dr. B.J. Fogg's Behavior Design Lab. Dr. Bobinet spearheaded the design of evidence-based clinical interventions as well as patented algorithms benefiting over 30 million members. Stick around till the end of the video if you want to discover Dr. Bobinet's 3 tips to unlocking a natural and a guilt-free path to a healthier you. I'm your host, Daniel Drachov, and this is CareMinds podcast. Dr. Bobinet, thank you very much for joining me today on this CareMinds podcast episode. I'm super thrilled to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, it's really nice to be here. Thank you.
We're living in a digital age, and I think this has brought a lot of awareness into the human-centric aspects of our lives. And weight loss is a topic that everyone is familiar with, whether you want to lose weight or gain weight or maintain weight. And there is a million of ways out there, and people are doing it in different ways. But there is one thing that I think is very common amongst all of them is the feeling of frustration. A lot of people are frustrated with not achieving the result. They're frustrated when they relapse back into the old ways, back to their eating habits. And it seems like as we grow older, it becomes much more challenging to acquire new, healthier habits. And you've spent most of your life studying one question: why are we doing the things that we're doing and not the things that we promise ourselves to do? Why aren't we hitting the gym on the Monday, and so on and so forth? So Dr. Bobinet, please tell us, why are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah, so this has been kind of at the heart of myself as a physician, as a scientist, as a researcher, as a behavioral expert. And, there's something in psychology called the no-do gap. And for many, many years, all of my patients and all of the people that I was trying to help, I've been designing for things for millions of people in the past. And, it's something that is, it's agnostic to what you're trying to do, whether it's lose weight, stop yelling at your kids, whatever change you're trying to make, take your medicine, whatever the case may be. And so this is called the no-do gap. And it's, quintessentially, I know what to do, but I don't do it. And it's the most toxic and frustrating thing that we have as a human trying to get ourselves to do the right thing. And there's new neuroscience that basically has now shown us why this is the case. So there's an area of the brain called the habenula. It's like half a centimeter big, and it's just above what's called the thalamus for those who are really familiar with the brain. And the habenula is turning out to be the most powerful behavior controller ever found, and nobody knows about it yet. And so this part of your brain basically reacts whenever you think you failed at something, and all of its cousins. You're disappointed, you're frustrated, you're demoralized, been there, done that. All those kinds of things trigger this part of the brain. And when it's triggered, the problem is that it kills your motivation to keep trying that thing. So evolutionarily speaking, it saved us from, eating a toxic plant more than once or touching a hot stove more than once. But when it comes to health behavior change, it is the biggest barrier that all of us face to being able to do the thing that we wish we would do. So when I was writing my first book, Well-Designed Life, where the habenula research was in terms of publications was very, very nascent. And I found 2 studies, just kind of happened upon them, because I was researching motivation to make sure that I had the neuroscience correct. And on one study, they found that if somebody thought they failed at something, the habenula in their brain would light up, and that was a novel finding. In
Mm-hmm.
another study, if you had the habenula light up, and this was, I think, in rat brain, if the habenula lit up, then the animal would lose all motivation to keep trying that thing. And so, ever since then, an explosion of scientific findings have happened that they kind of fill out the puzzle of the habenula. For example, more recently, a UK study found that those young men who had unfortunately lost their lives to overdose of heroin had a shrunken habenula, meaning that in addiction, what happens is that this area normally stops you from doing something,
Mm-hmm.
and the addictive substance basically disables the habenula, and it shrinks it down so that you're driving without any brakes in your car, because the habenula
Mm-hmm.
normally acts as the brakes for your behavior. It stops you. It makes something aversive to you, whereas your dopamine system is the gas pedal. And so these folks were running in a car that had only a gas pedal and no brake pedal.
Mm-hmm. This is super insightful. So Mother Nature takes care of us in terms of like us species not dying doing the same thing, but it triggers.
Right.
It is actually the same mechanism that prevents you from picking up good habits. So knowing about this phenomenon, um, how would it like still be implementable within a regular person's life if they're trying to, let's say, ditch an old habit and get a new one?
Yeah. So, what people do oftentimes when they start a new habit is they set a goal. And this is something that the current system prescribes as the way to do it. So, set a new goal and then you track against that goal. So, if I want to work out 30 minutes a day for, 3 to 5 days a week, which is like this kind of current standard, then I set that goal and then I kind of watch myself whether I'm doing it in a given week, whether I'm tracking it on an app or a piece of paper or even in my mind. I'm keeping track of how I'm doing against that goal. And the problem with that model of doing things, which seems so logical to do it that way, is that it lends to a lot of failure. And then the failure then
Mm-hmm.
triggers this area of the brain that we just talked about. And then I lose my motivation to keep trying. And so if I'm trying to replace a bad habit, for example, with a good habit, let's say that my bad habit is I eat too much sugar, which is my personal challenge in this life is I eat too much sugar. I even ate it last night at dinner, just to be completely honest with you. And so if I'm trying to replace that with a bad habit with a good habit, and I say my goal is to replace all sugar, with either water if I'm doing sugary drinks, or a calorie-free substitute, or some like stevia or something natural instead of sugar, then I watch myself in that goal and I track against that goal. And the second that I don't do it, then I set this part of my brain off and then I stop doing it. I lose my motivation to keep trying it. And so that
Mm-hmm.
is the kind of the problem that we run against. How to do it differently is something called iteration. So iteration is,
Mm-hmm.
as as a person who creates products, product design, and people who iterate on things, even in our phones, there's a version 1, 2, 3. I'm up to 16 right now in the way the phone operates, and even the type of phone that you have is a different version each time. And so that's how we need to think as we want to, build new habits. We need to think about, like, how can I iterate on this? If I ate sugar at dinner last night because I couldn't help but have a dessert, then what I need to do is iterate on that. Once the dessert is in front of me, what do? I just take one bite and I finish it. That's the way that I can kind of shrink down the harm that I'm doing. Even when I fail, it's not a failure because I can keep going because I'm iterating on my sugar addiction, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Hey there. According to YouTube statistics, only 5% of people who are watching this episode are subscribed to our channel. So if you've enjoyed this episode so far, leave a like, leave us a comment below, and consider subscribing to our channel to see more content like this. Thank you. The iterative mindset is something that also drives Fresh Try as a mobile app. And you, as a CEO and a founder of that, Could you please help us understand how that framework, if you will, is implemented there and how it helps people with their weight loss journey?
Yeah, so iterative mindset is something that I discovered out in the field in behavioral research of people who were working for a very, very jumbo company. And some of them had achieved long-term healthy weight and gotten off all their meds and were managing their conditions really, really well long term. And the majority of people had not gotten there, had gotten stuck along the way. And so the people who did had just this one thing in common, which is an iterative mindset, which is basically, instead of setting a goal that's hard, that has this very narrow sense of success, I'm going to practice it. I'm going to experiment with it. I'm going to just see what I can get myself to do. That their mentality was very specific around that. And it was very distinct from the goal setters, And so then they would practice instead of goal set. They would experiment instead of goal set. So that's number one. Number two is that whenever they would reach an impasse, then, they got bored with something or something was kind of like a failure to launch, then they would iterate their way there. They didn't think of it as a failure. They just said, well, let me just iterate. Let me see what I can do. So the software that we've built is basically following this natural way of doing something that we found in these people who were kind of the clever maze runners who were able to make it out of the maze when everybody else got stuck. And the software leads people through the same process, setting up a practice. We call it a try, try to do this. Let's see if you can do it. Let's see if you can get yourself to do it. Otherwise, no blame, no shame. Try something else, So it's not this hard goal. And then iterate on it whenever you find that it's not working or when you've mastered it and you want a challenge, you can iterate as well.
So you've brought up a very important point, is that when faced with something that is not working, these people are trying more options instead of not trying at all. And the application, it seems to me, basically translates that idea, and it is the core sort of method behind the madness. But what should one do if knowing about this knowledge doesn't really help and they feel stuck? How does the app help these people in that situation?
Yeah, so you're there to train your mindset first and foremost. We have a whole area of mindset training. If nothing ever changes, nothing ever changes. If you come in with, being indoctrinated like most of us are into performative methods, goals and tracking and, measuring everything and quantifying everything, which by the way, does work long-term for about 5% of any population. So about 5% of people can succeed with performative tools only. The rest of us need some combination of performative tools, very short-term, just to kind of get a baseline, let's see how much I'm eating in a week, that kind of thing, and then shut that off and then start iterating from there. So in the case of the software, if I find that my intention, my practice, my habit practice, my try is not flying the way I wanted, then I can go into iterate and I can start to make changes to what I'm trying. In my case, recently, I had been trying to get myself to do yoga and stretch more, and I had some success with that. But I also noticed that my vegetable, intake went kind of down, relative to before. And so I recently tried something. I iterated at a very large level of instead of stretching, I'm going to focus on vegetables. And it's not that I didn't. I'm still stretching, at night and various things that I had already set up as a habit, and that will kind of wane over time. And so I just kind of make rounds on the different habits that I'm tending to, and I focus on one and I try that and I practice that and I iterate on that until that's strong, and then I move on to something else.
And does the application help assess people in terms of picking up their habits overall and try to suggest strategies of implementing new habit instead of an old one, or maybe squeezing in a new habit in the already established schedule? How does it work?
Yeah, so once I've selected my process, which is when you onboard to the software. It helps you to, really hone down on the thing that matters to you most and that you want to try the most. And then supports along the way include, prep steps. And we have a whole how-to section. If you are not educated in how to do that, you can look at all these hacks and recipes and products, whatever would be in service to you more easily or more creatively doing that habit practice. That whole resource section is there. For some people, they're pretty advanced and they don't need that kind of stuff, but that's there. And then there's train videos where you're training your mindset and it's all applied to real living. So, iterations that are included and kind of how-tos with the videos as well. And then we also have a social feed of gratitude and intention, which kind of keeps everybody motivated. It's a motivational fuel that kind of sits alongside your practice, and people send hearts to each other. They send random acts of kindness cards. It's all anonymous and confidential, so nobody's, trolling anybody, and we're protecting everybody in there, but we're all doing it together. And so those are some of the supports that help with the overall arc of the habit practice. And then every 21 days, we give you an opportunity to check in and measure your habit practice so that you can kind of see your own progress of, what's your score on your habit practice? Is it a habit yet? Is it a strong habit? Is it something that, I may want to iterate on, and the system guides you through the check-in process in a dialogue way to kind of find what you really, are struggling with and to find solutions for that and to get support.
Are you struggling with the staffing challenges when it comes to finding the right talent in today's market? What if there was a company out there who helped you streamline your hiring process and give you access to the top relevant talent? The App Solutions Staff Augmentation is a game changer in today's workforce solutions for health tech. Staff augmentation is a process of seamlessly adding skilled professionals to your existing team through a trusted third party. Your team could be extended in under 3 weeks without you spending countless hours on sourcing, pre-screening, and interviews that ultimately lead to nowhere. Why do you want to go the old way when you can simply remove the overhead associated with sourcing, recruiting, training, and retaining talent? Say goodbye to those costly and time-consuming aspects of traditional hiring. You gain access to high-quality talent pool that has been already pre-screened for technical and domain-based knowledge. And on top of that, selected developers are completely aligned with your working hours, communication style, and processes. We get it. You have doubts and have had disappointing experience when it comes to hiring, and the App Solutions understands the importance of trust and customer satisfaction. You can try one of their skilled software engineers for 2 weeks on real tasks and pay if you're satisfied with the work. That's right, you've heard it correctly. If you're interested, hit the link in the description below, mention the CareMinds podcast, and get your sought-after team extension. Save your time and money now. Now let's get back to the episode.
I think that your concept leverages digital technology very good in terms of it wouldn't have been possible to have such a toolkit around you if the technology wasn't at the point where it is right now. Where do you think the wellness space is going when the digital component is being so prevalent and the AI was just introduced into our lives at a consumer level? Where do you think the whole wellness space is going with that?
So where it is going, unfortunately, is more performative and giving up. So en masse, what we've seen is that our whole society now has a habenula hit, meaning our habenulas are on when it comes to behavior change. So we are collectively disempowered. We are collectively lost our motivation. That causes us to reach for GLP-1s or quick fixes to things that, are more building up your behavior. But a GLP-1, if you don't change your diet, it'll just cause you to eat less pie, but it won't cause you to eat vegetables. You still have to change your behavior. And so it's something that is upon us to change the sort of operating system that we're using from performative mostly to mostly iterative. And I think that wellness is going to have a revolution in terms of becoming more iterative and supporting people in iteration because that's more natural. It avoids the habenula. It avoids this huge pitfall that we didn't even know we were triggering this whole time. and it helps to empower people to get the results they want. In our research on tens of thousands of people, the only factor in long-term change is whether you iterate, is whether you keep your habenula at bay, and you have a way of managing and turning off the failure signal. Because once you feel like you failed, subconsciously you lose your motivation to keep trying, you become depressed, you become anxious, you become addicted. All these things happen, funky things happen. And this is the kind of culprit that we all have to focus on as we revolutionize wellness to be mindful of this new neuroscience. It just hasn't hit the presses yet, which is why I wrote the second book, so that people could know about this and they could start to design better solutions, and we could really liberate ourselves from this stuckness that we've come from.
Yeah, I think that this is super important that you're sharing this knowledge, especially considering that the kinds of spending that the US healthcare does spend on the care itself has a lot to do with dealing with the consequences instead of preventing things from happening. And so not only that would improve the quality of the well-being of the people that try to implement certain approaches and new discoveries, but also that would help the system as a whole. Can you please share with our audience your 3 tips on improving your life and implementing a new habit?
Yeah, so anytime you want a change in your life, number 1, you need to approach it as a practice or an experiment instead of a hard fixed goal, because that narrows success to fix it and to narrow it down to one version of success. So practice and iteration and experimentation, opens up the vista of the number of ways that you can succeed. So that's number 1, is to practice or experiment, have a different attitude towards it. Number 2, if you do not see any traction, if you do not see yourself doing the thing, don't lose heart and don't feel like you failed. Number 2 is failure management. So being able to neutralize any idea that I'm trying this thing and it's not working, and then number 3, that lends itself to iteration. So instead of failure, iterate. Iterators never fail. They just look for the next opportunity to tweak or tinker, or let's see if I can modify this little thing, or let's switch gears entirely. Those kinds of ideas need to be alive in you, and you don't get stuck in the failure pool. You don't get stuck in your habenula, and you can neutralize it and move on. Those that keep going long term are really, really good at that, and good at this whole process of experimentation or practice, failure neutralizing failure, and then iterating your way out of any bind. And that makes you unstoppable in the end.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Dr. Bobinet book, Well-Designed Life, 10 Lessons in Brain Science and Design Thinking for a Mindful, Healthy, and Purposeful Life, is available worldwide. The link would be there in the description. Dr. Bobinet, where should people go if they're interested in finding out more information about Fresh Try and some of the stuff that you are doing?
Yeah, so my personal website is drkyrabobinet.com. And I have a new book coming out in a couple months called Unstoppable Brain, which describes everything about the habenula. It's like a whole thesis on what we just talked about. And then FreshTry.com, FreshTry.com is where you can go and download the software. And there's always going to be a free version. So, enjoy, and I hope it helps people to get empowered.
And can people pre-purchase your book?
Yes, they can. It's available on Amazon right now for pre-purchase.
Awesome. Dr. Bobinet, thank you very much for your insightful tips.
Thank you, Dan.
If you found this episode interesting, please consider liking it, leaving a comment, and subscribing to our channel to see more content like this. Until next time.